Hello, Lee Cooper here with Module 7, the Human Resource Frame. Here we go. So, what is the Human Resource Frame according to the video? So, mutually beneficial was kind of like a big piece that I got out of that. So, the organization is serving the individual is serving the organization, and right, you have a relationship that both people want to be there, and it's working towards their personal goals, it's working towards the goals and vision of the organization. So the goals that are also those goals and visions that I'm talking about are serving human needs. It's not just about making a dollar, those kinds of things, or right, like making a product. It's about how are we serving people. So that was kind of the big idea there. Some other things was that it's collaborative, right, and it's about building relationships. So it's a huge part of that human resource frame. It is like talking to people, having people talk to each other, and coming up with decisions together. It's very democratic, right? Another part of that is we, as a leader, I will need to look at the individual needs and skills of the workers that I have, of my staff, of my team, and being able to understand, okay, like what is it that we need? How can other people support each other? How can I support each other? And what are the skills that they have? How are we going to make sure that we can utilize those skills in the best way? So again, the leader, they're facilitating to meet the needs of individuals as well as ensuring that the skills are being utilized. And again, all of this is to serve kind of that mutual beneficial relationship between the organization and the individuals. Okay, so when thinking about this, it was really difficult because again, it's like you want to be moving away from, well, they're all important because they are. And how can we move more towards the idea that what is vital for the survival of the school or the organization? So what is vital? So how are we going to move away from those things? So I tried to come up with a couple different perspectives. I'm going to be honest, I couldn't stick with just let's figure out one list. I was trying to come at it from different perspectives, and it really changed my list kind of depending on the situation that I put it in. Okay, so what is vital? Let's go with my first perspective. Let's think about if we're going from a schoolhouse all the way up to a school building. Right, like we're talking about like a one building school, what is going to be the vital things there? And then as we're kind of going to a school building, what is it that we're going to add? So what are the things that are necessities? What are those vital things kind of at the atomic level? And then as we move more towards this larger level, how are we going to add things on and kind of go from there? So that's a perspective that I took to try to figure this out. I did take another perspective. We'll take a look at that here in a second. All right, so from that perspective, again, we're looking at what is vital, what is a luxury. So, what is vital? Well, we're going to have the principal. And really, if you go to a schoolhouse model, you have the teacher, which the teacher is the principal. They're kind of everything, right? And then you have the students. And then from there, right, you have the parents. So those are like the three key things. You have facilitating education, you have the students that are there, and you're looping in the parents. Those are very vital. And in that smaller kind of setting, right, you definitely have the community. Well, sorry, as you build, you have the teachers. You're going to need more teachers, obviously, and then you have a principal that is leading all of these things. Then next, you're going to be having a community. So if you're building a community, like you are going to be getting that support from the community that are going to be able to meet the needs of all these other things that might be a luxury at this point. So community, I think, is really huge. And I think that even though I am taking this as a perspective from a school building, I'm also trying to think about this, like, okay, so what is actually important to the students? And like, how is it that we're going to get the most out to serve our students? And actually, I kind of think that this should stay where it's at, is that you have kind of this as your base structure. And then, also alumni, where that's kind of coming in as the community as well. And you're getting support from all of these entities. And that's really what it is, right? That's the meat of it. These are your key stakeholders that are keeping these things going and serving these students in the best way. So that's kind of why I put in this order, and then kind of moving towards, okay, but let's be practical. We do have, to serve a larger purpose here, and, there's more than just this small model where we have more than just a schoolhouse. So I think that, right, you have help. You have an assistant principal. And at this point, if you have the assistant principal, they can be helping and serving maybe some of these other goals, the other functions, the functions of the office staff, right? Like before you have an office staff, you can have an AP that's serving that. And that is, kind of doing the community outreach. They're talking to parents. They're right, dealing with student behavior issues, those kinds of things. So I think that's pretty important. Obviously, then, right, if you can, like bring in an office staff, that's really going to be, kind of become your connector, the person that is being able to connect all of these things together and taking off a lot of that administrative load to where you can focus on, less paperwork and more actual like serving of students and serving of teachers and serving of parents and those kinds of things. I think also like a mental health staff, that wasn't something on the list, but I wanted to include it. So how are we serving students in regards to social emotional things and just being responsible people? How are we supporting them? I think next comes the maintenance staff. The reason I put this low, I think, that is a vital thing, but the reason I kind of put this lower is like if all else fails, you can hire somebody just as you can hire anybody if you have money set aside, right? Like you don't have to have a staff on hand, but you can hire somebody to come in and help out with the school. Next, I would have paraprofessionals. So again, how are they're going to be supporting that school? But they are, more of a luxury. It's coming down to it in that point. So, it's something that if you're looking at how are you going to be hiring people, right, it's going to be a little bit lower on that list. And then lastly, nope, not lastly, but I have cooks, right? Again, if you have a community of people that can come together and serve the school, like you hopefully can get students fed and those kinds of things. So what is vital? But cooks are going to be down there on that list, just being honest with that. And then lastly, custodians. And the reason I put this last is sometimes I have to clean up my own floor. Sometimes I have to take out my own trash. And I think that it actually helps me to feel good about it. I really like actually doing those things. It helps to kind of build buy-in, and you can really build a community. If you have students that are helping out with the cleaning, you have teachers who are helping out with the cleaning. So I don't think that it's really a vital thing, but are they nice to have? Absolutely. Am I grateful to have a custodial staff? Absolutely. But I don't think that they're necessarily a vital piece. All right, so another perspective I want to look at, because this is kind of where I teach and where I'm going to be teaching next year as well, as from a low-income population perspective. So from that perspective, we're looking at I took this from the perspective of more Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and how are we meeting those needs, and how do we ensure that students have the same academic opportunities as a more higher income school. So my list changed around a little bit for that, but I still think it starts with principals. It starts with students, right? We're definitely there to serve those students, and that's the priority. That's why they're there. That's why we're there. Next is teachers. So we really got to be able to support teachers in those things, because in a low-income school, it is very difficult to keep teachers, and we definitely want to make sure that we're supporting them in the best way, and principals are taking priority for those teachers to ensure that we are maintaining that staff, because that's something that's extremely real that I've seen, as I've worked in these low-income schools. Next, right, definitely still looping in parents. How is it that we can get that support? Which honestly, it's not always the best support, and but parents, I would, they're doing the best that they can, and that's not always enough. But but you can definitely, you want to be bringing in those parents, and maybe even helping them out too, right? In the best ways that we can. Next, having an assistant principal, right? Obviously, I think is pushing that idea of that support, and that's going to be able to take a lot of the load off to where you're having two heads that are able to do all these things to serve their school, to serve these students, and to have the best learning environments possible. Office staff, again, I think is really huge when it comes to being able to connect all of these things together, especially right now I work in the student population is mostly Hispanic speaking, and Spanish speaking Hispanic population. I don't speak Spanish, and I'm definitely grateful for our office staff that can be those connectors between our parents and our students and our teachers. Okay, mental health staff, I think, is also, this is kind of where I changed up the list a lot, is towards the bottom here. So how are we meeting the needs of students? And this isn't a physiological need, but it definitely kind of is that need of safety, that need of love and belonging, that self-esteem, those kinds of things. So that's really where I kind of put that mental health staff there. I believe strongly that we have to have good food. And, it's something that I wish I could push that more, but one of the things that I run into is I have a student with really awful behavioral things, And, I'll ask him, I'm like, what did you have for breakfast? Like, what are you eating? And he's like, I didn't have breakfast, or I just had some apple juice. And it's like, well, dude, no wonder you're like acting like this. And so I think that that's something that's really important, and something that I really want to be able to bring in as a school leader, if I am in a low income, is how can we make sure that students are getting like well nourished? And I think that that's something that's highly overlooked. And I don't know. I don't want to sound, I guess, kind of grandiose about this or anything, but I really do think that it's important. And I really think that it can help to alleviate some of the behavioral things that we see, and just when we give students a good diet. Okay, and then next I would have like paraprofessionals, because again, like kind of maintaining teachers and making sure that we are retaining teachers, like we need to have that support in the classroom for sure. I think that sometimes like all of my attention goes to one student because of behavioral things, and the rest of the class is kind of left behind because of it. And I think that that'd be, like to have that paraprofessional there that can, really like take on those extremes to where you can then better teach the rest of the class. Maintenance staff, obviously, like, that's going to be important. It is a huge thing. You got to make sure the school can run well, and that's something that you don't want to be worrying about when you already have like, much bigger needs and worries that are going on. And that's also why I put custodians a little bit higher on this list too, because that's something that you don't want to have to be worrying about, and you don't want to have that teacher burnout. And again, I think it can be beneficial to have teachers helping out in those things, but it's something you don't want to have like to worry about and have, again, that burnout. And then this was really hard for me, and I feel like I might regret this decision, but I put alumni and community at the bottom of this list, and part of that is because I think that, particularly in these situations, you want to be seeing how can we as a school serve these students and serve our community and serve. So that's really kind of where I'm coming at it from there, and not really looking at it from, I guess, like, it's more how can we serve versus how can you serve us. And so that's why it's kind of lower on the list. And again, I could definitely see that being higher on the list because, like you do want to build up that community and those kinds of things. But I think that for me right now, it's starting at the school level, and it's starting with the student, and it's teaching responsibility for that student to where then they can go out and come back into the community and build that community stronger. And like typically when you have a low income, like just these are kind of the facts of what's going on, is that there's not necessarily like a strong community, and that people are, working a lot, and there's not a lot of time that can be given, and it's really hard to ask for things. So not saying that you shouldn't, but again, that's just kind of why it's on lower on that list. But still very important, still very vital. But if we have to rank these things, this is how I rank it for this perspective. That's all I have. Thank you very much. It's been a great class. I hope you all enjoyed. I'm sorry it's a little long. It's about 13 minutes, so I hope you actually watched the whole thing. Thank you very much.